Thanks for downloading this episode of the Resilient Advisor Podcast. My name is Jay Coulter, and on this episode, I am interviewing one of the most inspirational people I've ever had the fortune to call a friend. His story is one of exceptional resilience. Shay Eskew was severely burned on 65% of his body by a neighbor's child at the age of 8. Motivated by being told that he'd never be competitive in sports again, 27 years later, he willed himself to become an Ironman athlete. Shay's story of anything is possible has been featured on NBC's Ironman World Championship broadcast, USA Triathlon Magazine, Ironman, and countless others. And now, the Resilient Advisor Podcast. In addition to being a triathlete, he's an executive in the healthcare industry, a motivational speaker, and a former bear trapper. You are really going to like this story. Shay, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Jay, for having me on the show.
Yeah, so let's start at the beginning. Could you tell listeners a little bit about the tragedy you experienced as an 8-year-old?
Absolutely. My story is a little different than most. I was 8, and my mother had asked me to warn my neighbors about an aggressive yellow jacket's nest that they had in the ground in their yard. So I recruited my 7-year-old friend. We walked across the street to inform the father. We knocked on the door, but the father wasn't home, but the 15-year-old daughter was. As we tell her about the aggressive yellow jacket's nest, she asked us to show her where the nest was, and then asked if we would assist in removing the bees. We asked her, what do you need us to do? She goes, nothing. I just really need you to stand here to make sure they don't leave the nest. And so she took a match, lit it, threw it down at the nest in the ground, and nothing happened. And as my friend and I are standing there watching the yellow jackets fly in and out of this hole in the ground, next thing we know, we feel something splash our bodies. Hits me on the right side of my body, mainly on my face and shoulder and neck. And it hits my friend Jeff on the left side of his body. And with an instant, we realized what it is: gasoline. She had pitched a cup of gasoline without saying a word and without realizing the match was still lit on the ground. And within an instant, both of us were engulfed in flames. Luckily, I had the wherewithal to stop, drop, and roll and put mine out. I then grabbed a hose and put my friend Jeff out, who was just standing there screaming. And that basically was the start of our journey 36 years ago.
Wow, Shay. So what happened next? Let's talk about the severity of the burns and what your journey was from age 8 to, say, college.
Absolutely. Just getting burned was the initial tragedy. We soon realized we had no insurance to cover a $2 million hospital bill. The 15-year-old's insurance company was refusing to accept liability for our medical bills. Luckily, the Shriners Hospital in Cincinnati heard about us, and so my mother and I were relocated up to Cincinnati for the next 3 months. And one of the things about burns is there's a lot of complications. Infection set in. I lost my first 3 skin grafts to infection. Gangrene set in. They had to amputate my right ear. My right arm was physically melted to my side. It took 3 years and countless surgeries for me to be able to learn how to, or to be able to lift my right arm over my head. I had to physically learn how to write left-handed to resume the 3rd grade. My neck was permanently stuck at a 60-degree angle. Again, it was melted to my shoulder. So that was the start of the journey. And as you can imagine, going back to school as a 3rd grader was challenging with all the scars. I had to wear custom orthotic braces. I had to wear 3 of them. One of them covered my entire chest and fit snugly up under my right arm. My arm was physically strapped to it. I had to wear a plastic neck brace that prevented me from turning my head. And then I had to wear a plastic face mask, which basically looked like a hockey mask, with holes cut out for my eyes, 2 holes for my nose, and a slit for my mouth. I had to wear all 3 of these braces 22 hours a day for 3 years straight.
So that's third grade to sixth grade?
Third grade to sixth grade. And again, I was told based on the initial injury that being competitive in sports would not be an option for me. And the whole time I was in the hospital, all I could ever think about was I wanted to be an athlete again. I was a great athlete before the injury. And I knew that if I could once again be able to play sports again, I could regain my identity. 2 months after getting out of the hospital, I started playing baseball. As I mentioned earlier, I couldn't lift my right arm, so I basically had to throw the ball side-armed to first base. And then 3 months after that season ended, I started playing football, which was a hazard because I have no nerves and no fat tissue on my face, neck, and shoulder. So my father customized a set of shoulder pads so that I could play football just like all the other kids. So I played sports, football and baseball up until I got into sixth grade. Then I was introduced to wrestling. By the time I finished high school, I was an All-American wrestler. Then I was introduced into boxing in college, was a 3-time boxing champion in college, undefeated, and eventually inducted into their Hall of Fame. And then shortly after college, I got introduced to Ironman triathlons. And if your audience isn't familiar with Ironman, that's a 2.4-mile swim, followed by a 112-mile bike, followed by a 26.2-mile marathon, all within 17 hours. And I've been fortunate to compete in 10 world championships in 7 countries over 4 continents over the past 10 years. And the last 4 years have been ranked in the top 1% in the world of Ironman.
So, Shay, that's quite a journey from Little League Baseball to where you are today in the Ironman world. Give us an idea of what motivates you. There has to be something in you that is driving you more than the average person could even comprehend.
I've always been motivated by people telling me I can't do something.
I love it.
And I think that started from when I was 8. You know, when they told me I could never play sports again, I wanted that more than anything in the world. And to put it in perspective, I tell people, imagine if I said you can't have chocolate ever. You instantly start saying, man, I sure would love some chocolate ice cream.
Yeah.
And that's the way life is for me. When you tell me I can't do something and you really mean it, not kidding aside, but you say there's no way you could do it, I'm going to do it. And I've always prided myself on being able to do things that most people just don't have the tenacity, the perseverance, or the ability to suffer to achieve what means the most to them in life. And the things that I've achieved, it wasn't because they become easily to me. It's because I outwork everybody else. Anything I've ever achieved, I've had to work 5 times as hard as the normal person. But because I worked 5 times as hard, it meant 10 times as much. And I take a lot of satisfaction doing what most people are scared to even attempt. I'm not scared of failure. I realize failure is part of the growth. But one of the things that I learned early on in life is you have to learn to embrace the suck. That is a term that's well known in the Ironman community. And basically, that means that if you really want to achieve your goal, you're going to have to suffer. Suffering is part of the process. And so when things start to get hard, you don't panic. You don't say, poor me. You don't play the victim card. You welcome it because you know it's coming. You talk to it. And when you're really in your deepest suffering, that's when you say, this is it. I'm going to come out of this something awesome, a force that can't be reckoned with. So those are the experiences that I look for, is any opportunity to really sharpen my mind and demonstrate that I have what it takes to push through the pain.
So I want listeners to know that I've known Shay since the mid-1990s. We went to college together. We were fraternity brothers. There was an incident that has always stuck with me, Shay. Not an incident, but a conversation that you, myself, and one of our fraternity brothers, Rob Gilmore, had. And Rob said, you know what, Shay? When I walk across campus and I have a Z on my face, I am self-conscious and don't want to talk to girls. Shay, with these burns on his face and arm, walks right up to any girl on campus and will have a conversation. Shay, you've always had a tremendous amount of confidence. Where does that come from?
I think it comes from knowing that I focus on the things I can control, and I can't afford to lose sleep over the things I can't control. Again, going back to those early days, when I looked in the mirror, I knew those scars would be with me the rest of my life. There was nothing I could do. And trust me, it wasn't because I didn't cry myself to sleep for months. When I first got released from the hospital, fortunate enough that Wes Craven released his movie Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh, no.
And I can assure you, when I would walk down the halls in the elementary school, I could hear kids say, "Hey, Freddie. Hey, Freddie." And and when I looked in the mirror, that's what I saw. And then eventually I realized no amount of crying, no praying, no words of consolement from my parents would fix it. I just had to harden up. And I learned early on there was no way anybody was ever going to hurt me. There was no way you were going to break me down. And so later on, when those same kids started saying, "Hey, Freddie," in the hallway, I'd say, "Yes, I will see you in your dreams tonight." And it's one of those things you just realize once you embrace your own insecurities, deformities, and shortcomings, everybody else is fine with it. People will see what you show them. And to point that out, when I first got into sales 10 years ago, I was interviewing to be a producer for a big property and casualty firm. The owner was in his mid-50s, very smart man. He said, "Shay, I know you're a smart guy. You've got an MBA in finance. You obviously grew your own company, sold it. But I'm just curious, how do I know you're going to be successful in sales?" And I said, "Lewis, to me, that's a non-issue. I tell you what, I'm so confident I'm willing to bet my first 2 paychecks. If you and I go make 10 cold calls, they're going to remember me over you every time." He looks at me with this grin on his face. You could tell he's thinking, "You cocky little bastard." And he said, "Shay, all right, you got my attention. Spill the beans." And I said, "Lewis, would you agree statistically tall men and attractive women do well in sales?" He said, "Absolutely. The numbers are there to support it." And I said, "Is it because they're tall and attractive, or is it because they're memorable?" I tend to believe it's because they're memorable, and being tall and attractive happens to be attributes of being memorable. And I said, "No offense, but there's a lot of mid-50s balding guys out there making sales calls every day. There's only one-eared burn guy out there making sales calls, and that's me. Therefore, they're going to remember me over you every time." I got the job on the spot. And that's one of the things I've learned is the things that most people would run from, having scars all over your body, it's actually an asset. When I walk around a campus, everybody knows who I am. For better, for worse, they will always remember, "Hey, that's the burn guy." How many people would kill to have that kind of presence that people would always remember you every time you went somewhere? And so I learned early on, you really just have to shape your own reality. The things that can be seen as negative, I'm always looking for, what is the silver lining? How is this preparing me for something greater? And I can tell you, when you start looking at life through those lenses, you will see every obstacle is truly an opportunity in disguise. And what I've realized, if you really want to be a top performer, it's how you perform through adversity that sets you apart from everybody else. If we didn't face those challenges, how would opportunities ever arise? I'm a believer, it's not the smartest guy who wins. It's a combination. I think there's definitely something to being smart, but I'm going to outwork you. I'm going to beat you because I'm not giving up. But once people know that, life takes on a different meaning. When you're not scared of failing, when you say, "Hey, no matter what, I will always keep pushing, I will always get back up," you're not scared to take on anything.
Shay, that's a fantastic way to reframe your tragedy and leverage it to your benefit. That's something everybody can learn from. So when you talk about outworking everybody, you really bring that from a lens that most people don't have. In addition to your speaking business, you're traveling for work, you're competing in Ironman races, you're also the father of 5 kids under the age of 12. How do you get it all done?
It's like I've always heard, if you want to get something done, find the busiest guy or woman in the room because they know how to make it. They know how to get it done. I get up at 4 a.m. every day. I get in 2 hours of training every morning. Saturdays, it's 3.5. But to me, it's all about time management. And so when I'm constantly bombarded to do things, I look at it and say, will this contribute to helping me achieve my goals? If not, say no. Too many people inadvertently steal your time, and you have to be aware of that. Again, you won't catch me on the weekends watching football games with people, and it's not because I don't want to. It's because I have so many other things that are more important to me that I want to achieve. I can't do it. I don't miss my kids' sporting events, so any of my races is scheduled around their sporting events. But to me, it's all about focus. Write out your goals. I've got a whiteboard in my basement, which I call my pain cave. That's where I do all my training.
I love it.
On my whiteboard, you see all my Ironman goals and you see my business goals. I have them written down. When I wake up every morning, that's the first thing I see. When I go to bed at night, that's the last thing I see. When my family enters and leaves the house every day, it's what they see. Everybody knows these are my goals. This is what I'm working towards. So there's no temptation of being distracted because I know what the end goal is. So many people don't know what their end goal is because they don't have it written down. When you ask them, how do you define success? They have no clue. So how do you know if you're ever going to reach your goal if you don't have one defined? And for me, that's one of the keys. And then number 2 is part of getting it all done. So I said 5 years ago, I truly want to be the best I can be. I may not be the best athlete, the best sales producer, but I want to be my absolute best. I want to know that I've given it everything I'm physically capable of giving. So I went out and hired a former world champion, Ironman world champion, hired him as my coach. This guy has been writing all my workout plans for the last 5 years. We talk weekly. I know if I do everything he's written, I'm going to be successful. I also have mentors related to my professional goals. I talk to them regularly. And to me, that's the whole key is I don't have all the answers. I know a lot of people smarter than me, and I know they're willing to share their wisdom. So don't be scared to ask for help and have them give you serious feedback when you're not living up to what you set are your goals.
Yeah, coaches and mentors have such a profound impact on folks. And for the financial advisors listening, I can tell you we see that in our industry. When you have people who can help you remain accountable and stretch your goals, it can have a real impact on your business. Shay, let me twist that just a little bit and ask if you're currently a mentor to anybody.
I am. So I've got several people I work with. And part of my requirement is if you're going to ask me for help, I will help you. But the moment I see that you're doing your own thing, that you're not taking the advice, we're done. And I tell everybody up front, I'll help you. I will graciously give my time, which is one of my most valuable assets. But you better follow it, and I better see it being lived out. And when you're not, we're done. No complaining, no crying. That's it. There's no second chances. We're done. But I'm a big believer in helping others. And, you know, I have lots of people reach out. I'm also a believer that I meet people for coffee, probably 2 to 3 people a week. I even had coffee with a lady when I was competing in South Africa a month ago. Shared with her kind of what I've done because she was looking to write a book. And she knew I had just written a book highlighting my journey. And it's amazing the impact you can have on people just spending 30 minutes with them.
Yeah, I agree, Shay. So let's talk about that book. Well, tell listeners a little bit about what they could expect from it, the name, and where they can find out more information.
Absolutely. The book is called What the Fire Ignited: How Life's Worst Prepared Me for My Best. It is available for pre-order on Amazon, but I'm asking everybody, wait till November 6th. Put that date on your calendar, November 6th, and you can order the book. It will be available for next day delivery then. You can also go to whatthefireignited.com to order the book. The book is essentially my 36-year journey from getting burned as an 8-year-old up to now as a father of 5, a professional working and ranked top 1% in the Ironman community. What I do is walk everybody through those early formative years, the obstacles I encountered, how I dealt with it, and how those situations impacted me emotionally and physically, but also how my spirituality has really served as a guiding light for me throughout my whole life. And then I also share some of the training secrets that have helped me sharpen my mind. I talk about how I would do 15-mile runs starting at 10 o'clock at night. It's not because I have to. It's not going to impact my fitness, but I do it because I know that was on my plan for the day. And I also know that the normal person would just go to bed at 10 o'clock and say, hey, no way I'm going to bed. So I talk about the impact that has on you mentally of doing the hard work, even when you know it's not going to get you that much further ahead, but just gives you an edge up on the competition.
Excellent. I will have links to all of that in the show notes. Shay, your story really, truly is inspirational. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing.
Absolutely, Jay. And thanks for having me as a guest.